Hello, this is H2O Gaming and today we are talking about Crimson Desert. This is a game which was released in mid-March 26 by Pearl Abyss, known for MMOs such as Black Desert. I've already put in nearly 50 hours and I'm actually wondering why. Crimson Desert was the subject of a huge buzz ahead of its release, so it was no surprise that it was on my radar too. At best, my expectations were on par with The Witcher 3. A game that had really entertained me and which I definitely have to review in a video at some point. However, it was difficult to get any concrete information about Crimson Desert before its release. Everything was always full of superlatives. Huge, great combat system, story, from multiplayer to single player, lots of things to bring to the game to life, side quests and stunning landscapes. Huge game world. Most of this is true. Immediately after the release there was of course some controversy. IGN, whom I don't think much of anyway, gave the game a rather poor rating. In my opinion, far too poor. When I compare it to other games, IGN has already rated 6 out of 10. I wonder how they arrived at that score. It wouldn't be the first time a game magazine has given a game a rating that's quite different from the player's own. I also think that the influence of traditional game magazines on purchasing decisions has become rather limited. Obviously, the game magazines will then have to reposition itself and offers new content in order to remain relevant. It seems that IGN is following the same path as other content creators. They are churning out clickbait headlines and their content is becoming increasingly sensational. It reminds me of the pranksters on YouTube, who started out with harmless pranks, but then in order to stay relevant, kept escalating things further and further. However, in my opinion, this is a strategy that offers no long-term prospects. After all, where does it go from there? I think that these days purchasing decisions are influenced by a range of players who, whether on a large or small scale, convey a sense of credibility. But now to the question, which side is right? I agree that the game gets off to a slow start and that the systems aren't always explained very clearly. Some of them are even repeated. For example, when you're setting up your first base, you end up revisiting many of the systems you learned in the first hours by yourself. At that point, I had already played for several hours and had a good grasp on most of the systems, such as cooking, crafting and so on. And that's why I would have liked to see these quest lines introduced a little earlier. The game offers a chance to get lost in side activities and stray away from the main quest. You come across puzzles, but that you can unfortunately solve yet, as the game hasn't given you the skills to do so. You only acquire these as part of the main quest. Generally speaking, I don't mind this so much if I were told that I can't progress any further there. Instead, I ended up fiddling about and then giving up in frustration. Later, when I do have the skills, it all clinks into place, but the frustration has already set in. Crimson Desert offers a wide range of activities, hobbies and possibilities that it's certainly not easy to find a balance and a pace to do it justice. There's certainly room for improvement. Essentially, apart from the exception mentioned, the game has succeeded in implementing this wealth of systems. You can tell that the developers tried to let players experience this world by making almost every action imaginable in such a setting possible. Farmer, hunter, craftsman, bounty hunter, thief, anything goes. Since the large numbers of players also mean a wide variety of approaches to an open world, this is no easy task. Perhaps the game should have been opened up later and the player guided more closely along the main stories at the start. As always, here are my thoughts on the story, combat system, gameplay and technical aspects. Story and side quest. The bad guy attacks the good guys, but the best one survives and seeks revenge. So the best one, our protagonist, is actually good. Apart from few minor thefts, he is always morally beyond reproach, helpful and a team player. But he's also very predictable. There's no grey area, no moral dilemmas, and everything is pretty straightforward. The developers made it clear that the story had been neglected in favor of gameplay and other systems. This is regrettable, but it was the developers' decision. In the long run, however, this may prove beneficial, as it now provides a solid foundation on which more exciting stories can be developed in the future. The side quests are usually fairly straightforward. Liberate these locations or characters, collect this and that, or solve a puzzle. Every now and then a quest offers potential for further development, but isn't taken any further. For example, a quest in which a son is disowned by his parents and takes revenge on humanity. Our solution is simply to defeat him, and that's it. There could have been more to it. The side quests are numerous, and some are linked in various factions. These factions eventually form an alliance with you. Whether this will prove helpful at some point remains to be seen. The quests can usually be completed without much effort. This leaves you with a sense of having achieved something. I would rate the story a 5 out of 10. Now the combat system. I find the combat system fluid and very playable with a controller. I think I have played more with a controller over the last few months than I did in the previous 10 years. The range of different combat systems is more than enough for me, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I can see why some people find the controls completely overloaded, but you just need to understand how this works schematically. Everything to do with defense is tied to LB, so it's always a combination of LB plus X, for example. For attacks it's a combination of RB plus something. Understanding this makes the combat system a lot easier to grasp. Many who criticize the system and demand the freedom to remap the controller should consider how they would actually remap it. The combat system feels solid, and you get the impression that there's real weight to it. If there's one thing to criticize, it's that the camera is your biggest enemy at times. Even when you're locked onto an enemy, the camera keeps changing angles, and it can sometimes be very confusing, especially when there is little time to parry. It's less of a problem in open spaces than it is in close quarters combat. The boss battles are mostly entertaining, so occasionally frustrating. Anyone who's ever faced the Spider Queen will know that battling a camera angle is sometimes worse than the spider itself. Fighting enemy camps is usually just a numbers game and not really that difficult. Overall, the combat system gets an 8 out of 10. Gameplay. You could certainly talk about this for an hour. There's a huge range of activities: fishing, cooking, building, upgrading equipment, horse riding, mining and exploring the world. This game offers a vast array of things to do. It's clear that a great deal of effort has gone into immersing the player in the world. Most of these activities are optional and therefore make a very good addition to the game. There's always something to discover somewhere, whether it's ruins, enemy camps or places where something is hidden. The game managed to immerse the player in its world and keeps them engaged. At the same time, it offers beautiful and varied landscapes with a day-night circle. Developing your base is interesting, and I'm curious to see what changes there will be. This is why I'm giving the gameplay a 9 out of 10, especially as many systems are optional. I'm deducting a point because the animations are always the same, and at times the solutions to the puzzle don't seem very logical. Technology. There is no question about it for me. Achieving this level of graphics with such low hardware requirements is an achievement I wish I'd seen in some other games. Of course, there are things to criticize, such as the slightly washed out look that occasionally creeps in and the camera work. However, I'm confident that the developers will iron these out, hence a 9 out of 10 for technology. The final score. I give this game an 8.5 out of 10. Above all, the game world, the combat system and the technical execution create a solid impression that draws the player deeper into the world. Points deducted for a merely average story and at times lackluster characters prevents the game from receiving a higher score. I also realized that a game world of this size is difficult to fill with the content that matches The Witcher 3. But there must be a reason why I have already put more than 50 hours into the game, even though the story and the characters aren't particularly gripping. You can tell that the developers know how to keep the player engaged, and as long as the player finds it entertaining, that's absolutely fine. When I consider the speed at which the developers are patching the game and making improvements, I am very optimistic that a very good game will develop from this foundation. When I look at my progress and assess how far I've got into this game, it seems the majority of it still lies ahead of me. So can I recommend this game? Resounding yes, if you're generally a fan of classic MMORPGs. Completing quests gives you a real sense of progress in terms of the game, world and your gear. You can overlook the run-of-the-mill story. Crimson Desert offers good entertainment and the chance to spend many hours exploring its world. If I think about which game manages to balance all these aspects better, it's quite a challenge to come up with one. There are games with better combat systems, others with better stories, but few games achieve the overall quality across all aspects. The Witcher 3 and Dragon Age come close, but nearly is truly better in every aspect. So if you got the time and you need a lot of it, and aren't already playing it, just give it a go. It has my recommendation, even though that I'm more a story-driven player and not so much an accomplishment-driven. So I wish you all the best and have a lovely day. Bye bye.